Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Flanagan, and welcome to our program on conflict, and specifically how the Enneagram fits into conflict management. Our guest today is Lisa Hancock. When you talk about conflict, Lisa, it's like two or more people are gathered. You always have that possibility of conflict existing there. Before we get into it, first of all, thank you very much for hosting us in your home. This is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful in the patio. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Why are you interested in the Enneagram?
Thank you for having me and being here. I appreciate it. I'm interested in the Enneagram because I'm a mediator. That is my career. And for years, I looked at ways to how can people sit together and listen to each other? Because what we do is when we're in conflict, most of us shut down instead of opening up. And the reason is because we think we're right. And so I was looking for some kind of tool to help people open up when they were scared or didn't feel safe or were in the middle of a big fight. What tool is out there that would do that? And I came across the Enneagram, and it has been a game changer in my business.
Before we get into the Enneagram and related to conflict situations, I'm sure there are people who are watching this who have great familiarity with Enneagram.
Right.
But there are also some probably just looking for some kind of an understanding of what Enneagram is.
Right.
Let's do that to talk about the 9 numbers and what Enneagram is about, what it's not about,
Okay.
and what those numbers represent.
Okay. So let me start with this and say that the Enneagram is an ancient personality assessment tool. It's been around for, some teachers teach that it's been around for over 2,000 years. It is a psychological, spiritual tool, and what sets it apart and makes it different, and what I'm interested in is instead of just assessing like what is right or good about, what the strengths of a personality are or the weaknesses of a personality, the Enneagram gets into the motivation of a behavior, that's the psychological piece. And my experience is that only with motivation, when you know your motivation, can you make any lasting change, because it's the root of why we do the things that we do. And so that's what sets it apart and what makes it different. It's being used today in offices, in corporate America, in churches. Anybody who is interested in learning more about themselves and discovering ways for personal and professional and spiritual growth, this is not the only tool that's available to us.
No, there are others, like Myers-Briggs and so forth. Yeah.
Plenty. This is a good one, and what sets it apart is the motivation piece.
Okay.
And
let's talk about those 9 numbers that it represents. And I know each one of those numbers represents a different motivation piece.
Right.
So you want to start with 1 and tell us about what those mean?
Let's start. So the Enneagram is made up of 9 different, and you think about only 9 personalities in the world, but really there's gradations of all of these. So if we started with 1, and there's 9 types, if we started with type 1, it is the perfectionist, and so the motivation is to be perfect or to do things right or perfectly. The type 2 on the Enneagram is the helper. By the way, nobody likes the name of their number, their title, and they're labels to just help us get to where we need to go. It's not meant to be judgmental, but it's the helper, and the motivation for the helper is to be needed or loved. Type 3 is the performer, and that type is what motivates that type is the need to perform or the image. They want their image to be applauded and respected and revered.
Sure.
So, and by the way, Dallas is a 3 city, so we have a lot of those around here. Type 4 is the individualist.
That's where I am.
and that's Dan. And that type, the motivation is to be recognized as being special or unique, to be an individual. Type 5 is the observer. And that type, the need is to gather information and to be looked at as being competent. Type 6 is, and I knew this was going to happen because when you're on camera, you just forget these kind of things, and so I have to think about this. Can you help me?
You want to come back to the 7? Go 7, come
Sure,
back? Okay.
I'll go to 7 or 8 or 9. But no. Let me. I've got my notes and I can look. I really don't. I don't want to leave anything behind. So actually, I don't really have the names of them. But anyway, I should know 6 because there's more of those in the United States than any other number.
Yeah.
But the motivation is to be secure for type 6. They want to be safe. And in this world that is it's such a scary place right now. It's a scary place for type 6s. So type 7s, we call the Epicurean. And their motivation is to explore or taste everything. So they don't want to feel the pain of life. So they avoid pain at all costs because pain is not fun. Mm-hmm. Type 8 is the challenger, and their motivation is to not be controlled. It's funny because type 8s, they don't want to control you. It's not that there's no control in their life. It's that they don't want you controlling them. Gotcha. So that's their motivation. In type 9, their motivation is to not be affected by life. They want to be totally, completely pain-free. So they avoid conflict at all costs. So there's 9 different types of people in the world, and according to your wings, and if you are, and this gets a little bit more involved than we want to get, but the reason why these types look so different is because some of us lean on our numbers on either side, and some of us are in stress, and some of us are in security, and so it can look really different all the way around.
You just gave us a hint in terms of how some of these numbers deal with conflict when you mentioned 9 tries to avoid it. So kind of a general question so you can dive into this issue of conflict. Mm-hmm. What does Enneagram have to say to us in terms of the way we deal with conflict as a human being? How should we look at it?
I like to reference the work of a 20th century psychoanalyst. Her name is Karen Horney. Mm-hmm. And her constructs, she called them social styles, give us a really good idea of how these different types of numbers fit in sort of a conflict spectrum. And she uses 3 different labels. She uses people who are assertive, people who are withdrawn, and people who are compliant. And types, we'll start with assertive. Types 3, 7, and 8 on the Enneagram fall under the assertive social style, which just means that they will put their agenda before yours if you let them. They tend to be more outspoken, and they don't look for conflict. One style does, but they don't run away from it. So we say that these people move independently of other people. It may look like they're looking for conflict because they don't shy away from it for the most part. The withdrawing social styles are 4, 5, and 9, and these people, when they're faced with conflict, tend to withdraw and get their needs met from themselves. So you will find these people typically conflict avoiders because they don't really need other people, like the compliant social style, which is 1, 2s, and 6. These people move toward other people during conflict and please or accommodate. So what helps me as a mediator with Enneagram and conflict is that right away most of us show up differently in when we're in conflict. We're in opposing social styles. And that right there causes conflict because we expect other people to respond the same way that we do during conflict, but in fact, most people will respond differently.
Okay, when we're in a situation of conflict with another person or a group of people or however that might be, I'm not really going to know what their Enneagram style is.
No.
But so what does that mean in terms of how I use Enneagram in dealing with conflict?
So when you, right off the bat, the Enneagram shows us that we are different, that we are all have different perspectives. So that right there creates an opportunity for grace, creates an opportunity for compassion, because people are different than we are. And the Enneagram shows us that. But the Enneagram also gives us a look into how we respond to conflict, each of us individually. Mm-hmm. And so if we know ourselves well enough, we know that we come to the table and we bring something different than the other person. And so we know automatically that there's going to be a setup from the very beginning of looking at a situation in a different way. And so the Enneagram allows us to open up and gain perspective and hopefully have some compassion for the way others think. Mm-hmm. Because I think each of us are addicted to our own way of thinking. We expect other people to accommodate us when we're in conflict, and we expect other people to think the way that we do. Mm-hmm. And so the Enneagram opens that up and sort of can broaden our perspective. And at the same time, it also shows us our expectations. So right away, we lower our expectations and we broaden our perspective, which gives us more opportunity to think through conflict rather than just feel our way through. So that right there, we've got a much better chance of having constructive communication during heightened emotions and some kind of scary times.
Sure. So it's not only Enneagram helping us to know who we are and how we deal with other people in situations like in conflict, but you're saying there's also a skill in terms of listening. You said compassion was a part of that.
Yes.
And listening to what that other person where they might be in terms of an Enneagram, mm-hmm. And doing both of those, knowing yourself and being more compassionate and listening in the realm of that conflict, both of those are helpful.
Very much so. Dan, you said two things that most of us don't do when we're having an argument with people. We forget who we are, and we don't take the other person's point of view into consideration. Mm. And destructive conflict loves speed. So the Enneagram's kind of slow when you have to think through the fact that, okay, I'm a 2, and so I'm trying to please this person, so I might not be listening. I might be trying to just appease the person instead of getting my point across. That right there slows things down long enough for me to take a breath, take a break, and perhaps open my ears to what's being said.
Give us some space in the relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds
just
great.
Slow it down a little bit.
You bet. Well, I'm kind of wondering, I know as a mediator, you've dealt with situations of conflict, mm-hmm. probably some on a kind of a minor one-on-one situation, but I know you have with organizations as well.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us any specific stories that you have used the Enneagram in dealing with negotiations?
So I want to just, right off the bat, I want to share something that happened to me at the airport 2 days ago.
Okay.
And that was that there were people standing in line and there were 2 men talking, and it was very obvious. You can't, when I observe people, I'm not necessarily trying to discover their Enneagram number, but it's real obvious right off the bat how people are handling conflict. Are they moving aggressively, assertively towards people? Are they withdrawing, or are they trying to appease someone? And there was a man, they both thought that they were first in line, and there was one man that was doing a lot of yelling and another man that was doing a lot of backing up. And before it was all over, both men were yelling, and they almost started fighting. And I looked at them and I thought, he is assertive and he is withdrawing. But even the man that was withdrawing started getting it. It was a face-saving thing in front of a lot of people that were.
Right.
And so, it's very obvious how people show up because you can tell from their behavior. So right off the bat, that's how I have people show up at my mediation table. You can tell when they sit down which one of those social styles they are because they behave that way. So you don't have to know someone's Enneagram number to know their social style. So that's one thing that
you can
I look
witness
for.
it, certainly.
But another thing that comes to mind is, and I think I might have shared this story with you, is that several summers ago I had a large company, the office manager, call and say, I have a woman in my office who is, and she used the word poisoning. She said she's poisoning our office. We have a staff of about 20 that work in the office and then about 50 that work outside the office. And she said, we can't work with this woman anymore, and I need a mediator to help us have a conversation with her because she won't really even talk to us anymore. And so I met with the office manager. I met with this young lady. Her name was Carla. I met with them, and it was very obvious to me that they were just different social styles. There was no really poisoning of the environment that was going on. It was that Carla was doing her thing, which wasn't the thing that everybody else was doing. So I did an all-day Enneagram workshop with them, and what we discovered was that everybody in the office was assertive, except for Carla, who was withdrawing. And it looked like this. The assertive social styles all wanted to get together and have lots of happy hours and birthday parties and eat lunch together. And there was a lot of togetherness and a lot of fun, loud fun. But Carla preferred to do her work with the door closed and even headphones on. And she didn't take part in all of the festivities that was being offered through the invitations.
She was ready to be antisocial. Huh?
She was poisoning
right.
And when they discovered that Carla was a 5 on the Enneagram and they were all 3 7s and 8s, it was almost a light bulb moment for these people. I mean, everybody said, "Oh, it's not that she's doesn't like us. Yeah. Or it's not that she's antisocial just with us. It's that's how she's really wired." But the kicker is, after I do this all-day workshop, I find out that Carla is the biggest producer in the company of the sales force. She by far outshines everybody else, and she was the first original employee. She had been there 15 plus years, and they were going to fire her because she didn't sit and have lunch with them or go to the birthday parties.
Wow.
Because she was different. Mm-hmm. And once they discovered the difference and why, then it was okay. And Carla's still there as far as I know, and still selling up a storm.
Well, sounds to me like that's the real strength of an Enneagram, is that we know that we're in a world that's very diverse.
Really.
Every person's different than the next
Right.
one. So can we kind of summarize what we talked about today?
Sure.
In terms of Enneagram and conflict?
Yes.
Help me through, first of all, the Enneagram helping us to know who we are.
Correct.
First.
Self-growth.
Secondly, to be compassionate and a listener in terms of that other person who you may be highly anxious about right now.
Right.
But to back off, slow it down, and to listen to find out where they are and what their personality motivations are.
Right.
Would that be true?
Very.
Very true.
Spot on.
And is the third one to have a conversation?
To have a conversation instead of a conflict.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing wrong with conflict, because sometimes it's very necessary. It's just how we do it versus it's like responding versus reacting. And the first thing you said is just sort of is a good umbrella for everything, and that is when you take the time to get to know yourself better, like what are your triggers, then it helps us realize that there are people that are different than we are. But when we can manage ourselves, then it almost doesn't matter what's going on around us, like how somebody else is misbehaving. When we have our own true north and we all have our own guiding principles, then no matter what is going on, then we can stay true to ourselves and what guides us, and choose not to partake in blaming or name calling or in some of the other things that go on during destructive conflict. And so it takes two to have a conflict. So if you've got one person that's misbehaving and one person that knows who they are, knows the pitfalls, knows their triggers, and chooses not to participate but to sit back and think their way through, then you're just not going to have the destructive conflict that you would have had if two were in there duking it out.
Lisa, this is fantastic.
Go ahead.
Maybe we need to do more of these videos, you think, huh?
I think it would be great. I think, Dan, the world would be a kinder, gentler place if we all took the time to get to know ourselves a little better, and the Enneagram's one great way of doing it.
Great. Now, if somebody wanted to contact you maybe and have a little bit more information about Enneagram and conflict, how would they do that?
So I am director of a company called Restorative Communications, and I have a web page. So it would be restorativecommunications.com.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you,
And again,
Dan.
thank you for allowing us to be on your path.
I'm glad the rain stopped so that we could do it out here.
Great. Well, that's our program on conflict and the Enneagram. My name is Dan Flanagan. Thanks so much for joining us today.